Hello and welcome to C-Suite Secrets. I'm Heather Parsons, your host, a serial entrepreneur, a fractional CFO, and a business value strategist. I've spent years juggling business and family while helping entrepreneurs optimize cash flow and build real financial success. On our show, we bring you real conversations with founders, executives, and operators who are actually moving the needle in their business. No fluff, no filler, just real conversations and systems that work, and insights that you can put to use in your business right away. With that, let's dive right in. Today on C-Suite Secrets, we are joined by Dan Salganik on the show. Dan, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm quite excited to be here.
Excited to have you. I really look forward to the conversation today. So for those who don't know you and may not know VisualFizz, tell us a little bit about you and how you got started out.
Yeah, appreciate it. Started about 10 years ago now. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started my first company back in college. It was quite an experience being, like 19, 20 years old, starting a company. Before we had all these different tools and everything that we have today and AI and all the fun stuff, it was a little bit more hands-on and worked in the agency space for years. I found a lot of issues, challenges, consolidations, efficiencies, et cetera, and wanted to launch an agency of my own after seeing a handful of mistakes that I felt could have been a little bit more, I don't know, it could have been higher quality, I guess was the way I'd put it. So launched VisualFizz with my co-founder 9 years ago. At the time, we were kind of everything to everybody, figure it out agency. Since then, fast forwarding a handful of years, we are a B2B focused agency. We're full service. We are really specialized in what I call builds, or something along the lines of the infrastructure-driven project, construction, logistics, manufacturing, and basically that type of space. And we work with many established brands, anywhere from 30 years old to 150 years old, and help with their digital revitalization, digital rebranding, web components, and then full service marketing as well.
That's awesome. I love that. A couple of questions I have on being a serial entrepreneur. I'm also a serial entrepreneur, so I'm very curious to hear as you were going through the process and, getting started out so early on, what are some of the things that you learned that people who maybe start later on may not get?
I think one of the things I learned early, almost the inverse, is have a little bit of experience before jumping right into something, which when I was young, I thought, that's dumb. You could just do it, right? But you really do need a little bit of experience and guidance and assistance to get where you need to go. And the other thing I learned very quickly was don't make things that are overcomplicated. Oftentimes it's challenging to, or rather, let me rephrase, the best thing to do is to not focus on all of the outcomes and the product, but simultaneously focus on the journey to get to the end goal of that product. So making it incredibly easy for people to understand what you offer and making sure that there's a market for it. That has been an invaluable lesson that I've learned in my early days of starting my first company. It was not an overly, let's call it, successful organization. And now I've been running VisualFizz for 10 years. I've learned how to price things out and to manage conversations and make sure that what we're offering is something that people actually need.
I like that a lot. I see this with entrepreneurs that I work with. It's about keeping it simple. Most people, I'm sure you're super busy. I'm super busy. Most entrepreneurs, they don't have time for a complicated system that has 27 steps. They're like, nah, I'm
Mhm.
already overwhelmed and I need you to make my life simple rather than more complicated. So, what's one thing that you've seen in working with some of these other agencies and as you were starting out that you think they could have done a better job at to make it easier for either the people that you're working with or to deliver that better product that you mentioned?
Yeah, one of the big things that stood out to me was when I was working at a previous agency, it wasn't as much making it simpler, but actually listening to the needs of their client a little bit more and understanding what the client is offering or what the client does and the client's customers, who they are. Because when I was at the previous firms that I worked at, it's all about creating flashy case studies, case study driven work, portfolio pieces. But at the end of the day, where we needed to go is actually not as exciting or riveting or visually appealing given the nature of that customer. And we ended up spending a lot of the client's money with a very, very almost non-existent return on investment, which thus ended up probably, losing that relationship among others. And so the thing I learned very quickly was you're not building for you, you're building for them. And it's going to be very apparent when the customer finds that out and when you have not a lot to show for it. Um, so I always really stress, it's not even what the customer says outright to you. It's, oftentimes reading between the lines of their challenges, their concerns. And, and sometimes, to counter what I even just said, it's sometimes not what your client says, but it's what their customers need, because it's not always the correct path that the customer leads you towards. So it's a song and dance around like being a consultant and actually telling them that no, or taking a different path, but also listening further and finding the right path and actually driving them through that path.
I like that too. One of the things that I find working with other businesses is a lot of times they have an idea what the outcome they're looking for is, but they don't necessarily know the vehicle to get there or what they really need. And you
Hmm.
touched on return on investment a little bit, and that's where I really try to lean in with my clients. And I hear you doing a lot of the same thing, is really getting to that return on investment. So, what are one or two things that you see that really helps these businesses that you work with get to that return and
Yeah,
not
great
just be
question.
spending money, you know, for the sake of spending
Hmm.
money?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Many of my clients are in, let's call it not fabulous industries, right? These are companies that take 3, 6, 12, 24 months to close a deal. And a deal might be worth 25, 50, $500,000 or more. And a deal, I'm speaking B2B, but a deal also may be a purchase, manufacturing, or winning the bid to build an airport. They may be selling 5,000 tons of steel to a company, winning a Walmart account for paving. So these are not glamorous things, to get an ROI on, Amazon or ecom is pretty basic math. You spend $1, you make three. Um, in my industry, it's you spend, you know, $3,000 hypothetically. You wait, you build an entire process. There's like 25 steps to actually get to the sale, but you have to just kind of develop a plan so that when you bring in that B2B relationship, which is very much relationship driven, it's less product, it's more relationship at that point. Because you sell to people, you don't sell to businesses. You have to nurture and nurture and nurture and finally get to a point where they're ready to buy. And oftentimes that is, driven by sales, but more heavily nowadays driven by the marketing department. And then the sales closes. So to be able to get an ROI number is so much more complicated in B2B, which is why there's less B2B agencies than B2C, my assumption, because it's not a direct 101. Like you might be doing organic, social, and SEO and search, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, spend 100 or 200 and $300,000, but that ROI comes later as you're monitoring and tracking those sales. It could take a year. So it might not even be a same year ROI. But that's really important. It's ROI, and then for me personally, it's actually the more important metric that we talk about much less is lifetime value. A lifetime value of customer, in my opinion, is exponentially more important than the return on investment, which is often seen as first conversion.
I like that. I think keeping clients is huge. Clients and
Hmm.
clients and employees both, right? So you want to see that retention because they trust you and they like you and they value what you're providing for them. You touched on something that I learned in business probably the hard way is being in the B2B space. A lot of it I equate to like pushing the snowball up the hill, especially as a new business starting out, right? Because I see it as you continue to do the activity consistently, knowing one day that it's going to pay off. You can't see it today, but it's going to be there at some point because you're building brand, you're building the story and doing all the right steps, but it's not quick. So I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about how you decided to work with these clients that are not in a traditionally sexy industry for marketing.
Yeah. Back in 2019, I want to say we won an account with the largest paving company in the country, and that really I owe a lot to these individuals because they took a gamble on a very small company. This was only 2 and a half years after we launched, and give or take. And we didn't really have a team like we do today. We don't even have a full-time person at that time. That's when we made our first full-time hire. And so that company has been a client of ours for over 5 years and has been our largest client for many years. And we were really good at it. We understood their needs. We understood the fact that, a lot of agencies in B2B are very behind the times. They're doing stuff that they've been doing for a long time. And you should make sure that when you're running B2B driven marketing, campaigns, or basically your B2B agency, that you are not thinking that these B2B companies are slower or less smart than maybe B2C or something sexy or fast, something like Nike or Apple, because they're cash cows. They are built to scale massively and to reinvest and to ultimately grow on a more national level. And so to me, it was always very interesting to work with companies like that, because a lot of agencies don't care about, boring. And, I don't want to say all the clients are boring. They're not, because we get excited about it. But at the end of the day, concrete and paving and steel and, click tabs and whatever, paint are very interesting because of the application. I've been on top of skyscrapers that were not even built yet because my clients are building those things. It's actually very cool. So the long answer is they've always been enjoyable. These are individuals who do actually care a lot more about relationships than I've historically seen at other industries. They're blue collar generally and more family oriented and care about 5, 10 year commitments versus what's the hottest product out there. I've seen very reactionary responses from other industries. But then beyond that, we've just been really good at it, like multi-location national brands that are looking to grow by M&A and organically. Um, my team's just always done a great job. And at the end of the day, I actually asked them to choose where they see the future of VisualFizz, and that's what they said as well. They agreed. The builds concept that we're building is key to our, I think, success looking forward.
I like that, and my take on boring businesses is that they build legacy wealth because they're used to doing consistently things that are not fun and
Hmm.
they're in it for the long haul. It's not
Yeah.
a quick win and get in and get out. But a lot of these guys, this is their legacy. So I love that you're
Hmm.
working with them and trying to help them get to where they want to go. One other question that I have for you as you're working with these folks, what is one metric that some of these CEOs are really obsessed over that you wish they would ignore? And what's one that you think they should track instead?
Oh gosh, oh, that's a loaded one. I could go all day. Get me an old fashioned, we'll talk. There's a couple. One of them is vanity metrics. I can't stress enough how little impressions matter to companies that are in the space. I'll give you a story. I lost a bid that I felt that had a great relationship with the prospective buyer or the client, because another agency, a well-known agency, known for being very loud in the marketplace, um, told them that they could get 5 million impressions from their ad spend, which 5 million impressions isn't a lot of impressions. It's just geared towards how much money you can spend on an impression, based ad campaign. And I was like, this is a vanity metric. They sold something, I don't want to get too into the details, but they sold something incredibly obscure, something where there's probably only 10,000 buyers in the entire country, tops, maybe a couple thousand. And it simply didn't make sense to focus on these big vanity metric numbers when the real number that mattered was, or rather, the real um, strategy that mattered was account-based marketing, diving very much deep into the relationships around the few individual buyers that really exist in the marketplace who really care about this. Because I will tell you, based on the product, 99.9% of people in the United States could not care less about it. But the 0.01% of people that are buyers, that's what they do. They procure it. And so that is one metric. Now, the other one I would say, which is a little bit more relevant to most conversations, is AI. And I'm not saying to ignore it, because AI is incredibly important. But I think a lot of C-suite individuals, especially at maybe older brands or ones that aren't technology driven, are talking about AI as if it's like a godsend. But they don't know what AI really does. And I'm not saying that in any way that's disrespectful, but AI is a tool. It can certainly replace certain things, but I think incorporating AI to incorporate AI is a huge misjudgment of how to lead an organization towards a successful like next step or like a pivotal step in the company. Utilizing AI in the right ways is it's exponentially powerful. But I hear a lot of people who don't know anything about technology. I'm not saying I'm an expert. I'm really not. But these individuals say, I don't want to hire you because you didn't talk about AI. You don't need me to talk about AI. So that's something that I found interesting, and it's something I talk to a lot of people that are tech focused, especially in marketing or in development, that we kind of laugh about because they just say, I just need AI. I want AI. I need it, but they don't know for what. So those are a couple things, vanity and the use of technology without an actual purpose that they know of yet.
I like that. I talked to a lot of folks about AI. It is definitely a hot topic. But one metric that a lot of people don't talk about is 90 plus percent of AI projects don't drive a return on investment. So they're out
I
here
bet.
throwing this money, like drunken sailors and getting nothing in return. So I think,
Yep.
to your point, if you're not solving a specific business problem as an entrepreneur, why the hell do you care? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, it's not that you're behind, it's is it the right time and place to use AI? So I love
I
what
think
you're
we have to
saying
create a
there.
use case. Yeah, totally. I think, I mean, I use AI every day, so I'm not doubting it's incredibly powerful. I use it 20, 50 times, like 20 to 50 times a day. But I am not replacing my team members. I am not building my business around it. I'm scaling my business and making it more efficient because of it. But other companies that don't integrate that or think they could replace full teams, you may be able to move people around, but ultimately, I don't think that the C-suite individuals should be able to just say throw AI at it. It's not an end all be all band-aid, you know?
Right, exactly. And I think as we integrate more AI, we need to really pay a lot more attention to the security attached to it, to what is it going to do in our company long term, because, I know in marketing, if Google makes a big change or if Meta makes a big change, you have to react to that. And now we have this other layer that's going to sit on top that says whenever these AI engines make a big change, now we have to combat all of this stuff at the same time.
Mhm.
And I think if we're not really careful, as much as I love AI and think we should all play with it and adopt it, I think it can cause a lot of long term problems if we're just throwing it at things we don't really understand.
Yeah, I agree. And there's another point I was thinking about it as you're talking too is, there's a lot of people who read an article and they say, SEO is dead. And I'm like, well, that's wrong too, because SEO has just gone back. I mean, AI from an SEO perspective, I'm sure people will probably not like my statement, but it went back 5 years. It's like machine learning. It's learning based on kind of, how do I put it? You're providing it inputs. You're telling AI what to say by providing it a series of inputs that allow you to define yourself in a certain way. And that's actually a lot more like Google was years ago. And so people are like, well, you don't talk about GEO, LLM, et cetera, on your website all that much. Or I'm like, because what we do is we focus on quality code, quality content, all of that. And that is the same. There's more to it, so I'm being very general. If you have all the right things and then you're also answering common questions as if like AI wants you to in point of reference, then you're already doing most of the work. Um, everybody wants a hack, but I think the best hack is like doing good work, like being methodical, and that I could talk again. I could talk about that all day, so I'll leave it at that.
I like it. You also mentioned your team a little bit, and I know whenever we talked before, you've grown your team, but you have a lot of senior, tenured professionals on your team. Can you tell me a little bit about, what these experienced people bring to the table that you won't get as you're looking for brand new individuals that are just coming out of college or that are self-taught and haven't had that seasoning period yet?
Yeah. My first contract hire was 2 weeks into starting the company. It was a 15-year SEO that cost me more than 50% of what we charged, so the margins weren't great. But I found that the work was efficient and it was done well because I hired somebody who knew what they were talking about. I didn't offshore it. I didn't find the cheapest person. And this was 10 years ago with no money, no brand, nothing. And I knew that my reputation was at stake because I only had one client and then two and then three. And what I did over time, is when I mentioned I brought in my big client a few, years ago, the person I hired had over 20, 25 years of experience. They believed in kind of our mission and like building this agency out. We were nimble and small, and they came from big agency, and this individual had 20, 25 years of experience. And so what I realized in the years of building my company is, yes, I mean, I'm certainly not ageist or anything along those lines, but you need years of experience in order to do good work most of the time, especially in most of the more technical spaces, right? Sure, creatives can be creative at any age, but you need 5 years of coding experience, 10 years of coding experience to be a good developer. So over time, I've really focused on building a senior only team. And that's been really beneficial because I think a lot of times what I've seen, and this is going back to even when I worked at other agencies, I'm a PM, so I look into numbers and I'm very, kind of mathematically driven and efficiency driven. And I found that, work that was done by less than ideal team members or in terms of quality was sent back. And so let's
Yep.
do basic math, right? Somebody that costs $40 an hour that has to do the work twice is now $80 an hour. Now, the senior level person could be, I'm making, of course, all these numbers up, it's all situational. The senior level person could be $70 an hour. So I save $10, but beyond that, I have a client who's happy. And we're not even talking about inefficiency, PMs, saying sorry for the bad work. So ultimately, it's not just because I love senior people, but because it's actually more efficient to hire people who are really good, even if they're more expensive. It's the whole thing with the plumber, I charge you because of my 20 years of experience, not because the job is hard. It's really the same concept. So I've gone that route since the beginning. We have a couple people who aren't, 100% at that level yet, but the majority of the company has been at that point. And my clients who have dealt with other agencies and then come to VisualFizz are like, whoa, this is a big difference. Like the thing you delivered isn't flashy and shiny and crazy and trying to make up for something that, that it's not fluff, basically. It's just good quality, like proper delivery or deliverables.
Yeah, absolutely. And in talking to entrepreneurs and listening to some of the guys that are big in business, it's not that, and I think about it in my business too. If you're doing your first hires, why would you not want to get the best bang for your buck, right? Because you need people who are really going to drive a return on investment. And
Mm,
I love people who are coming out of college. I love that they're eager and all the things, but you just can't replace that seasoning period. And it's not,
yeah.
some people take 20 years to get it, some take 5. Every person's a little bit different, but it's how you think about things, not just, and how you listen to others. And I think it's, as you build your business, that's super crucial. Whenever you're a little bit further along, and like you have, 10, 15, 20 people on the team,
Hmm.
then whenever you bring in a more junior person, they have somebody to learn from. Because I think it's also super frustrating whenever you think about employee development to have this junior person that doesn't have anybody else to ask. Now you're responsible for
Hmm.
their care and feeding and career development, and you're both sitting there floundering. So
Yep.
I think it's
It's much more
smart, and
expensive.
it is very expensive, not to count the reputation cost and brand cost that goes along with it.
Yeah. And I will tell you the first, I mean, even today, but the first 5 years of running the company, I was by far the youngest person at the company. And I'm a big believer, like there's a lot of entrepreneurs that have an ego. I'm sure I have one too, but my ego stops when it comes to hiring people because I want people much better than me at the roles that they're hired for. I always joke, but like my job is to put smart people in a room and leave, like, or just like listen. I'm good at listening, and I'm relatively decent at talking, but the actual work that goes into things, that's my team. And so, I have prospective clients and I tell them, don't ask me these questions, go to my team. They're the ones who are specialists. I can speak about a lot of things a little bit. But if you really want to know about, technical SEO or the ins and outs of developing high quality WordPress, websites or, the latest and greatest in design, I will probably speak to you for 5 minutes. That person will probably talk to you for 3 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is one of the things that makes a good CEO. having that, that breadth of knowledge instead of all of the depth, and being able to let go of that a little bit. I know whenever you and I talked a little bit before, you had also mentioned pulling out of doing some of the day-to-day client work and really moving into that full CEO role. So I'd love it if you could share what's been a mindset shift that you have seen as you've let go of some of those things that you were working on before.
Yeah, it's probably the hardest thing for small business owners to let go of power because you don't trust anyone, right? You don't, it's like your first time, you have a firstborn, and if you let go and you hire somebody to take care of them, it's very nerve-wracking. You don't know who you're going to get, and you kind of watch over and this and that, the other. And then you eventually like figure out you actually need that person. And, when running a business, it's very much the same. You're no longer the one communicating with the client on a regular basis. You're not the one doing the work on a regular basis. So it's a huge shift. And I've actually went to the team and I said, I want to be, as of now, out of 50% of all work related calls, like client calls. Not because I love being on the calls. I find myself still in them, unfortunately, just because I really enjoy them and I love marketing. But you can't run the business and have it run you at the same time. And so I will say, like, just to give you a direct example, because I think it's the best way to, explain this, by leaving the internal intricacies of each project and every week by week and all the other stuff, like this bulk stuff that I had to deal with, my team kind of through me and a couple of others that I've brought on separately from my main kind of core team, we've built a huge campaign for VisualFizz over the past month, like rapid fire, 20 landing pages. We built this whole builds concept out even further, 25,000 emails, 20 landing pages, ebooks, podcasts, vlogs, blogs, like just blew it out, like kind of rebranded in some capacity. And that's all basically driving to next year's revenue. I've got really aggressive goals to grow next year, and a lot of that is driven through having time, actually developing sales pipelines and focused efforts and listening in and, that type of thing, and being on things like this versus, letting go and letting my team do what they're good at, which is the day to day, building out the client relationships and maintaining them.
I think that's super smart. One small follow up on that. You mentioned your time, and how are you tactically protecting your calendar so that you can have some of that freedom? I think that is one of the hardest things about being an entrepreneur and trying to grow and scale is figuring out what to say no to.
Yeah, I remember. So at my last agency, I remember seeing my former CEO's calendar. There was a bigger agency. They were about 2 to 3 times larger than we are today. So they were rather large. And I was like, wow, that calendar is scary. Booked solid every 30 minutes, 9 to 9 or 9 to 6. And my calendar became that. Like getting a call on my calendar some days or even like a couple weeks can just be impossible. And I was like, I don't like this. This isn't, I'm so booked up. I actually start working at like 5. And I've actually started to kind of, speaking to the calendar a little bit, put some work-life balance into my life. Like I do end work at like 5:30, start at like 9:30. I do the things I need to do ahead of time to make sure I have like a good productive day. But like those 8 hours or whatever, I'm all in. I barely eat lunch. I just go like nonstop. But I end at a reasonable time. I start at a reasonable time. And between those hours, I just now go to the calls that my team tells me, Dan, you should be on this. And that's generally we're working on growing the client. We have some growth goals in general, like sales, like talking about sales. Maybe there's a little bit of an issue or timing thing. Maybe we're missing a person, but very rarely do they go, Dan, you should be on this. But those times I go on, or if relationships are still new, I do try to stay on for a little while, like 30, 60 days, maybe up to 90 if it's kind of like a bigger client that, it's important we get it right. But other ones, I just ask the team, I tell them I'm probably not going to be involved, but also at the same time, I keep those calls on my calendar because I will hop on the calls occasionally without the team knowing I'm coming on, just to make sure things are running as they should be. It's not me trying to micromanage. I kind of listen in. The client, sometimes maybe they're happy to see me, maybe they're not. I don't know. But we have a good chit chat, and that's kind of the way I do it is so technically it's blocked, but I may not be going to that call.
Yeah, I like that. And that way it doesn't give others an opportunity to block it. So if you need mental health headspace, you get an opportunity to do that. You know,
Exactly.
as I think about our business and working with others, having that blocked time where you can just think about things is huge, especially,
Mhm.
being a serial entrepreneur, running more than one company. For folks listening, I can't say it enough. Take time to just be quiet and to be still and to think about what you're going to do next because like every time my husband and I get away, I come back with my best ideas. I
I
don't get
bet.
to take a ton of time off. It's still getting that different perspective is definitely nice.
Oh yeah. I'm a big fan of Saturday morning working, and I just said I block my calendar off, but bear with me. I do like Saturday mornings. It's like coffee, it's quiet, nobody's on.
Mhm.
I don't do like housekeeping and answer emails and all that. Like that's boring. I could do that during the work week. But I try to focus on like big brand initiatives or things that are like fun, genuinely fun to me, like, writing out like a big piece of content that's actually interesting, or reading about something that's, again, kind of interesting to me, or developing something or concepting. So it's more creative and, it's a good way to like, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're like working for someone else, enjoy your weekend. If you're an entrepreneur, it is a good time, like Saturday, Sunday morning, it's quiet, grab your coffee, like sit at some cafe, like get away from whoever's at your house if you can, of course. And like that's throw in some headphones and just like do something that's not your usual, but something that's really beneficial, like one big thing. Yeah, I really like stuff like that, or like QAing a site. I know it's kind of boring, but like it's fun, to like do site driven stuff. So yeah, I agree with you, especially if you're running multiple businesses. It's like prioritization is impossible. So finding the right time to do stuff is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is true. Prioritization is tough because there's always 9,000 things that are screaming at you. One other question that definitely comes up as we're talking about being, a full service agency and rebranding and moving into a specific niche. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about when going from that full service to more intentional, specific what you're looking for has really been beneficial and where it was a bit of a liability maybe before.
Yeah. I often say I wish I did this years ago, but maybe it's all a path you take, right? Um, but I've found that being in a niche or a vertical has been pretty helpful. You know, it's a hard question to answer because we're still building it out so much further. But I will say I've it goes two ways. When I was in Everything to Everyone agency, we had a lot of really fun projects. We still do, but we had a lot of like, hey, we're working with the city on this project, like City of Chicago. Oh, we're doing this huge major overhaul for cannabis dispensary. Oh, we're doing another thing and it's completely different, like in the healthcare space. We still kind of do that, but with a focus, it goes two ways. I think of it as like having a nightclub and there's a line waiting at the nightclub, but you don't know what's inside. I think when you become more exclusive and you focus on these types of businesses, you put in the big brands, maybe not too huge, but big enough that people recognize it, people go, I want to be that. I think these guys are good. I know they offer a lot of like manufacturing stuff, but like I'm in technology. I kind of want to work with them. And so that's great. But then you get the other ones, which is the real win, which is when you verticalize, people identify you as the leader in that space. And so, as of at least the recording of this podcast, I don't know in the future if people listen, you search top logistics marketing agency across the world, the AI platforms will pick it up and they will mention VisualFizz. And you search like branding a city because that was what we were interested in for a while. We are the top search for stuff like that. Um, it's it's really helpful to be a industry or sector or vertical leader because I will say the amount of leads and the quality of leads that you get are that much stronger and it's that much easier to productize your offering and sell it over and over again. We don't do that a ton, to be honest, because I believe in boutique structure. But if you are a vertical leader, it's very easy to be much more profitable. I think we are in between because I like building custom plans, but I do like the thought of productizing other inefficient things that we can, be a little bit smarter about when we build projects.
That's really cool. I think because figuring some of that stuff out as brands evolve and businesses grow, I don't think there's a wrong answer to it. I think it's just what fits for that business. But everybody I've talked to who is focused in on a niche and they know who their clients are and they really understand them has loved it.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I kick myself for not doing it like 3, 4 years ago, but again, you live and you learn and you keep on, it's your entrepreneur world. You keep on building, so we actually did end up building a secondary agency under VisualFizz, which is in cannabis, because we were really good at it. And so it's owned and run by VisualFizz, but it's all cannabis related because there's a lot of gold rush people in this industry. It's not a great industry at times, given like the caliber of like some of the folks in it, because they just think like, oh, I'm going to start something and be rich because they hear about all this stuff. Well, the world's changed a lot, but the clients that we have are very sophisticated business people. It's not like gold rush folks. They know how to build businesses. They built multiple, and we've loved that industry. I just told you we love boring businesses, but the cannabis space we've been really good at. We're partnered with some of the top like POS companies out there, point of sales companies. And at the end of the day, we carved out that niche for ourselves as well, and people recognize us to have built some of the nicest websites in the cannabis space, which is a really cool kind of space that we don't talk about very, much at all at VisualFizz,
that's really
outwardly
cool.
at least.
Right. And I can see how some people may react to that. But I also see, like to your point, there's a lot of super smart people who are in that business. And it's a business just like any others, whether it aligns with, you know, if that's something you want to be a consumer of, that's fine. That like you do you. But from a business and running a business perspective, those people still need the same services. It's not going to
Hmm.
change regardless of what the product is on the inside. So I
Exactly.
think
And
it's
it's
really
actually
fun
more
because
complicated. Sorry,
that's what
sorry,
I
go
was
ahead.
about to bring up because it's so heavily regulated.
Hmm.
I've had clients in the past that have run those businesses, and it's tough, especially because one stroke of a pen on a piece of paper can ruin somebody's business if they're not really careful. But I like that you're doing that and being diverse because you're really leaning in with two totally different sides of the spectrum, right? So something that is a little bit more edgy and new and different, but also being heavily tied in to not a sexy business, not something
Hmm.
that's new and everybody's talking about, but everybody needs it, right? And
Yeah.
a lot of these folks that are used to doing maybe a little bit more good old boy network, for lack of a better way of putting it. I'm not mad about it. I just want in the club, y'all. But, trying to be both of those spaces, I think is smart because they're both going to be around. It just may be a different product on the inside of the building.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's good to carve out a space that you're good at. That's why we built the B2B side, as you asked earlier. Why do we do the brand the build concept? Well, we were just good at it and we had a client in that space. And then why did we do cannabis? Same thing. We had a client who asked us for an impossible task that we nailed and they liked us and we really enjoyed that relationship and it snowballed into another one and another one and now we have a handful of great clients that are all in that market, but they've identified us as the agency for it. And so you have to chase that path. Like if the path, it sounds so it's like a cup, people, but like if the path is forged for you, you need to take it and explore it. And if it doesn't work out, like so be it. But I think if you don't explore it, then you're basically just you know you're maybe not focused, or maybe the other way around. I guess I'm thinking out loud, but maybe some people have to stay focused. I think for us, we wanted to focus on two different kind of verticals because of the nature of exactly what you said. And then other companies will never do something that they're not perfect at, which I totally appreciate. Um, but we like a little diversity in our work.
I don't blame you. I do as well.
Yeah.
And I think it keeps it interesting, right? Because you're seeing two totally different spectrums of the market, two totally different client bases, people you're interacting with. but they're all still trying to do the same thing. They're still trying to market to their
Oh
desired
yeah,
customer. They're still trying to bring in revenue. They're still trying to feed their family. They're still trying to do all the exact same things. They just have a different perspective. I like it. I think it's
absolutely.
smart. So, one other question that I have for you, I know we talked a little bit about just being an entrepreneur and the lifestyle that comes with that. So, what's one decision that you've made that maybe did not look the best on paper that's bought you a lot of freedom as an entrepreneur or given you a result you didn't expect?
Oh man. Uh, Gosh, it's like a loaded question. Well, okay, I'll give you one thing that actually has given me the life, but I don't think it doesn't look good on paper, but I think it can if somebody wants to hire me. I don't know about that one. I do have a goal in mind, and my life has changed a lot over the years, family and everything else. But I have a personal goal to travel 100 days minimum per year. I really believe in travel, and my wife, I think I drive her crazy, but you know, I also I live in Chicago, and if you look outside, it's 20 degrees, and there's 6 inches of snow, which drives my needs even further. But um, I believe in enjoying what you do quite a bit. Like I do, I've always I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Like when I was like, what was I? High school, I started a free hugs t-shirt thing and made money from selling those t-shirts. I sold like 250 shirts at like $10 a piece. It's like good money as a kid. And
Yeah.
so I knew what I wanted to do. I went to college. Actually, I have my examples. I went to college and I flipped a coin in terms of which school I'm going to go to. Didn't care. They were okay schools. They were in the same caliber. I went on the top of a chair with a pen and I dropped it onto the little course offering at the school that I was going to. It was all business. I crossed off two because I didn't want to do sports management and accounting. I don't care about either of those. And I ended up with my major and my minor. I was an operations management major and a finance minor, which I thought worked splendidly for what I ended up doing. And then the worst of all is I became an entrepreneur. I took a 30, sorry, a 70% pay cut from my job and started a business not knowing what's going to happen. And, it became a great opportunity. It truly is. I have a team that I enjoy working with. I have a job where no one's going to fire me. Knock on wood, like it's been a growing business every single year. But I always try to be very honest about entrepreneurship because I've always had a huge passion for it, that it's a horrible thing and it's an amazing thing, right? And I know that you run an entrepreneurship podcast, so I apologize if I'm poo-pooing on it, but at the end of the day, it is, right? It's lovely. You have so much freedom. No one is going to yell at me for taking my 100 days of travel. No one's going to yell at me for taking Friday off. I don't have those issues. At the same time, I have to make payroll every single month, and
Right.
I have 50 mouths that I have to feed. I have clients that get pissed off because they're in some mood, because of their own stuff, and that goes to my team. I've got to fix it. I lose clients, but I gain clients too, and there's so much stuff. There's an immense amount of pressure, but I think at the end of the day, like VisualFizz will out there for as long as it is. Maybe it's 5 years, maybe 10, maybe 50. I don't know, but I'm still gonna run another business afterwards. So like I'm still gonna do it. I don't know, maybe I'll listen back to this in 10 years, but I will tell you, like, I'm relatively unhireable, but I kind of am okay with that. It's on to the next one after this.
Absolutely. And I think whenever I work with entrepreneurs, I think getting to that, what does your freedom look like? It's not just dollars in the bank, it's freedom of relationship. I know, like, Dan Sullivan, if you've read any of his books, talks about this freedom of relationships, time, money, and I forget what the fourth one is. I have to look on my board. Purpose. So you're
Mm,
not tied to anything. And I think being able to take that 100 days is huge. I took almost a month in March. It wound up not being the best time to be gone, but it's something that's crucial to our family. And as we raise kids and we only get one life, I mean, hell, you may as well make the best of it. And if travel is your thing, travel. Like,
yeah,
structure your business and your life in a way that you can do these things, because the absolute last thing that I want is my daughter to be my age and be miserable because she's doing a job that she hates.
Yeah, I completely
I don't,
agree. And yeah, and that's and funny enough, kind of adversely, like the more we grew, this is the other part. The more we grew, the harder it became to do those things. It's an interesting one, and it's kind of like I was talking to my wife, and it was interesting because I started my company. I was actually traveling through Asia, 100 days. I've always been like a saver, so I had money saved up from like random things, jobs, etc. But not a lot of money. So you have a lot of freedom, you don't have a lot of money. You become a little older, you have a little bit of money and a little bit of freedom. And then you get
right,
older, you have more money and you don't have freedom. And that's, not everybody has that trajectory, but we work, we save, we do all this stuff. And I'm at a point now, like the business is grown up. Like it can easily continue to grow forever. But I am so busy all the time that I don't have those freedoms that I did. And so it's important to realize those as well. And we have a lot of conversations and kind of like you said, you need to get away. Like my big thing is car rides. I hate car rides, but I always have like time because I'm not glued to I'm driving. So I don't have a TV, I don't have a computer, I don't have a phone, nothing in front of me besides my thoughts. And as an entrepreneur, like how you get a lot of thoughts about like business and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, dang, we need to find a way to do both, run the business successfully and travel. And so I always make it a point to, explore new places and challenge, what we can do. Anyway, I've gone into philosophy at this point. I could do that for a while too, but I think it's always important to like my own feedback is like if people can, yes, explore it, enjoy it. If they're young entrepreneurs, like become a digital nomad and start your business abroad. I was living at $6 a night hostels. It was great. I had a great time, met some amazing people. Like that's the way to do it. Have fun.
absolutely. Like I say, and one of the tests that I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs about is can you go away from your business for a week or a month and still make money? I mean, it
Yeah,
doesn't mean I don't think I will between now and the time I die. I will probably never go away and not check email for a few hours. But is your business structured in a way that you still get a life that you're happy with? Because I
yeah,
know I traded in my golden handcuffs a couple years ago and I'm not ready to put those back on. So philosophy or not, I like it and that's my story on business.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with you.
Well, it's been great talking to you. I've loved the conversation. One final question to wrap us up. I would love it if you would share what's one secret that you wish you would have known starting out as an entrepreneur?
Oh man, can I give you two? Because
Yeah.
one of them we talked about. I think one of them is find your. Oh God, there's like more. There's so many. Okay, find your niche. Find the thing you're really good at. Don't build your product for the sale. Build your product for the quality of the thing you're building. Whatever that is. Just generic statement here. But like build it because it's really damn good and people can actually use it and want it. So those are like a couple of them. And then the other one that I would say is like it's really true that like these overnight successes are kind of a load of crap. Like most of these overnight successes take like 2 to 8 years to build, if not longer. VisualFizz is 9 years old this year, and it's certainly not an overnight success. I wouldn't even consider it success. I would say it's a good growing business, but I wouldn't say it's a success. I think that would be way too bold of a statement. But I think what people have to realize is like you need to stick to it enough where you've either got something or you don't. And I hate to say it, like if you don't, take it behind the barn and shoot it and get on with your life and build something else in the world that moves this quick. Like put as much time as you can into the thing. If it truly does not work, you've pivoted, you've made it. Don't put your house for collateral. Don't do crazy stuff like that. Just build something else. Take a job for a couple months, few months, year, and go back to it, and build something else. I just hear a lot about these like different, stories of how people built their business, but it took VisualFizz. It took us 4 years for me to like get to competitive salary, and I'm still not at my own. Just being fully honest, like if I go a private market, but again, you trade it for freedom and you trade it for a bigger thing, equity. The brand is worth something. So just for people who don't build software, because that's obviously a very different world, build it because you really enjoy it. Wow, I gave you like 8 different answers. I'm sorry, Heather. You
No,
got me
they're all
chatty
great.
now, but yeah, yeah. I mean, there's so much. There's so many things that I enjoy talking about and these different topics. But enjoy what you do, be able to pivot quickly, and make sure that your buyer is ready to buy. Like, make it easy for them to purchase whatever you offer. I guess those are my three. I'll stick to
I
three.
like it. That's great. Super helpful. I've loved the conversation today. If our listeners want to reach out and learn more about what you're working on or figure out how to reach you, what's the best way for them to connect?
Yeah, they can go to visualfizz.com and just reach out through the forms there. I'm the one who takes them. But otherwise, my LinkedIn is just linkedin.com/in/Dan Salganik. So it's just search me, Dan Salganik.
Awesome.
There's not very many of us.
Right. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody for listening to C Suite Secrets. If you have found today's conversation as valuable as I have, be sure to hit that like and follow button. And please share with somebody else who's trying to build a business. If you want more tips on how to grow between episodes, you can find me on Instagram at Heather Parsons Official, or you can connect with us on Facebook at C Suite Insiders. Until next time, keep growing, and remember, you don't have to do this alone.